Welcome back to my short game series. I want to share a few of my keys on how I execute the basic chip shot. While the definitions between a chip shot and a pitch shot can vary depending on who you talk to, I would define a chip shot as where the club gets parallel to the ground at the max length going back and then 45 degrees past impact as the max length going through. At no point do the wrists break down. In the backswing, if you swing the shaft to where it's past parallel to the ground and then release it to where the club head passes the hands in the follow through, that is applying more energy than what I would consider for the basic chip shot, and you're starting to get into a pitching motion. When it comes to the short game, there are two different types of shots. There's the direct contact and indirect contact. So when it comes to chipping, we can do either direct contact where we're trying to hit the ball first, or we can do an indirect contact where we try to land the club on the ground and slide it into the ball. Generally in chipping, we want to have a direct contact shot, but it's imperative that we have some bounce on the club. We don't want to have the handle leaning so far forward that when it comes into the ground, it just digs. So we do have some margin for error, so the club will bounce, but we're still trying to hit ball first. A good way to test your technique is put the ball a little more forward in your stance and see if the club slides through. And if it does, you've got good bounce. So that's why when you see good players setting up to a ball and you see them taking practice swings, they're trying to find contact with the ground to see how the club interacts with the turf. And then they can adjust their variables like shaft lean, so they can add bounce, take bounce away, they can raise or lower the handle. So if I have an iffy lie, within the direct contact, one of the things I can do is raise the handle and get the heel section off the ground to minimize club interaction with the turf. Basic setup for the chip shot is we want the ball middle to slightly forward as our baseline. We can move it forward or back based off trajectory. But we want the shoulders fairly level. If we play from a squared stance, we're going to have to move the shoulders more forward to move the sternum more forward. If we set up more open, the sternum's already looking more forward ahead of the ball, so we don't want to do that. Okay, we want most of our weight on the lead foot, and we do that by placing the lead shoulder down and forward, not by bumping the hips, which creates shoulder tilt and moves our strike point further behind us. Okay. From there, we want the shaft to be fairly neutral, and that way we can establish its distance and make the max distance to radius as long as it's going to be. So when we add some hinge, that now will move our strike point further forward versus having it set up where we're closer to the ground and then it releases and dumps a little early and then we end up hitting the ball fat. So tempo can affect how we play certain shots. When we have a direct contact or basic chip shot where we try to hit the ball first, we're going to have a slightly more aggressive tempo than we would with an indirect contact or a slide shot. That tempo count for a basic chip with hitting ball first is going to sound like 1, 2, and hit, because we want to have a more aggressive impact condition. Also, when we have a quicker tempo in transition, that's going to pull the butt of the club just a fraction. It's only a small amount, but the reason we do that is when we pull on the handle, you notice how the club head tends to elevate. That's going to provide a little steeper angle of attack. It's also going to preserve the line of compression, which is from the lead shoulder down to the club head. So that's going to help keep the hands slightly ahead into the impact and allow us to release the club and still have ball contact first. A direct contact shot is going to look like this. 1, 2, and hit. Okay? When it comes to the slide shot, it's going to be a little bit slower because we need to have time for the club head to release down the plane line to come into alignment, and then we follow with a body pivot. So that's going to look like this. 1, 2, and 3. Slightly different tempos, but you can use that to your advantage to help you with this shot. That's why it's imperative if you're under pressure with a slide shot or a flop shot that you don't rush the tempo, meaning we don't want to hit it with a flop shot, we don't want to hit it with an accelerating handle. We want to give time for the club head to release and then follow. So that way we can be sure to get maximum bounce. 1, 2, and 3. So that way the club slides through the ground. If you get nervy and you start jerking the handle, you're going to end up thinning the shot. But when you're hitting ball first, we want to preserve that angle of attack. So that's why we're going to be a little quicker, a little bit more deliberate with our tempo count. So 1, 2, and hit. Okay, so use your tempo to your advantage. Hinging the club is extremely important in the basic chip, and doing it correctly means keeping the club on plane. And one way to ensure that you're doing that is to set up with this plane line. And then when we hinge the club, we want the handle to go down and the club head to come up. This gives us the elevation of the club head, or the proper hinging, to give us solid contact. And if we were to come underneath the plane line, so if you are a roller and you roll underneath with a closed face, you're going to come in too shallow and you're going to have the leading edge exposed too much. Here's a great drill to practice the proper hinge technique. I like to feel an anchoring of the lead leg. So I move my trail leg back. I have the grip of the club resting about an inch away from to a half an inch from the lead leg, and then I push down so that the grip touches the lead leg as I swing the club head back. Okay, so it's going to look like this. So hinge it back and then release it through. When we hinge the club, we want to rotate the forearm as we push down on the handle to raise the club head. The amount that we elevate or hinge the club depends on the lie. So if I'm chipping out of the rough, I'm going to want to have more elevation of the club head than I would out of, say, this fringe off this putting green. I'm going to have the least amount, so it's going to look more like that. Controlling the angle of attack through wrist hinge is a key element in the basic chip shot. When you're hitting out of the rough, it requires more club head energy to get through the rough, as well as a steeper angle of attack to get to the ball more cleanly. Conversely, when you're hitting off of a tighter lie, you want to minimize the angle of attack to produce the most consistent strike and bounce angle during turf interaction. So when we set up, we want to set up in a fairly neutral fashion with the club head at the furthest point it's going to be. That way, when we add the hinge, it's going to move our low point forward when we release it. So in a basic chip, there is a hinge or elevation of the club with down pressure in the butt section of the handle that raises the club head up, and then we're going to release it. We never want to have this club head past this straight line of the shoulder, meaning it never goes this way. And one of the key points, though, is just making sure that your distance to radius is set so that that club head is as far away from your upper body as it's ever going to be. That way, when we add a little bit of wrist break or elevation, that's going to shorten the radius and help ensure that we hit the ball first. We want to set up square to slightly open. We want the face to be pointed at the target or the start line, and then we're going to have just a slight amount of hinge, and the ball goes in the hole. Now, I was just lucky. I hope not, but it probably is. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to aim a little more left. I'm going to open the face, and then we're going to do the same shot. Oh man, that's just getting really lucky. Well, let's try a runner then. So that one had a little bit more spin, so I'm going to aim now a little bit more to the right. I'm going to close down the face, and we're going to see if I can run one in. Yeah, that one I didn't make, but 2 out of 3 is not bad. Line of compression is a key fundamental between all great chippers. The line of compression is this lead shoulder, straight line down to the golf ball, and how the hands are oriented. Now, generally speaking, with the basic chip shot, we want the hands at impact to be in line or slightly ahead. We don't want them behind. When it comes to an indirect shot, That's going to be the opposite. We want the hands in line or slightly behind. But we'll get to that shot later. So a good way to practice this is lead hand only, where we start out by adding a little bit of forward hand pressure, which also elevates the club, and then we swing like this and let it release, trying to get it in line post impact or past impact. So practicing lead hand only, you can see it comes in nice and low, but it's crisply hit. The better you get at this, the easier this direct contact shot will be, because in order to do this and have solid contact, you have to have good technique. And that one I hit a little bit toe side. But if you practice more, you'll get better at it. So this has actually really helped my chipping a lot. Practicing this will ensure that you start developing the proper feel for this technique. I wanted to get the feeling of an indirect contact chip shot. This is going to be done a little differently. When we take our alignment rod, we're going to want the handle to line back up with the club head just prior to impact. So if I have the ball right here, I'm going to want to swing back. It's going to have a little bit of elevation or club hinge, and we're going to start releasing the club at the start of the downswing to get it lined back up so that it's in line just before impact. That way we use the bounce and slide the club through. So when we practice this, the ball's going to be slightly more forward, and we're going to swing the club head up and then let it release down and then follow with a pivot. We're going to elevate the club head, release it, and then allow the club head to swing through as we follow with the pivot. Okay, and that's gonna look like this. So ball slightly more forward. Okay, slightly more forward. We're gonna elevate the club head and then release it. When it comes to the basic chip, we can adjust trajectory with the same club, or you can use the same technique for different clubs. This is my 3-club challenge. So I'm gonna start off with the 62, and we're gonna go to this more distant location, and we're going to see a spray pattern between the 3 different clubs. So 62, 9-iron, and a hybrid. So first off, here's the 62. Okay. Let's go with the 9-iron. Right, and next we'll use the hybrid. All right, now looking at these shots, it looks like the closest is a tie between the hybrid and the 62, and then the 9-iron is just a fraction longer, but they're all within 3 feet. And this is why this is a good challenge. So then you can start assessing. If you start seeing patterns of repeatability, you can say, okay, what do each of these clubs do, and where are their strengths and their weaknesses? So that way when I'm under pressure, I can start picking the best shot. It was hit one now from the rough right here. Now most people would gravitate towards a higher lofted club, like a 62. So that's not a problem, we've got that. So let's grab the 62 and let's see how this one does out of this rough. Okay, not bad. Checked a little more than I thought it would. So it's about, let's hit the 9-iron. Okay. Now here's the one that nobody will pick, which would be the hybrid. But I want to show you just how forgiving this is. If you're a mid or high handicap and you struggle with chipping, or if you ever are under pressure and you're like, man, I just don't feel comfortable pulling out the higher lofted wedges, you can try and just do this little basic chip shot with a hybrid. And you can see it's going to come out rolling, and it finished about a foot behind the 62. Well, would you give up 1 foot in order not to risk chunking a shot with? Because the outcome off the turf is going to be more consistent every time with this hybrid. So that starts to do risk assessment and allows you to judge your shots based off their risk and reward. So if you had a really challenging shot, maybe that hybrid being an extra foot or 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, whatever, if you're a good putter, then maybe just taking that extra 5 feet for a chance to make the next shot versus trying to go for the hero shot and then end up stubbing it in the ground and now you're left with 20 feet. So it's like risk reward. So just for some additional content, here's a cool shot. If you aim the face backwards just a little bit, you can actually hit a really, really high lofted shot. So get some backwards loft. And now the ball comes in really, really steep. It's kind of a cool shot, but I wouldn't recommend it on the course. If you're using this, your scores probably aren't going to be very good. But I do aim I actually have the face looking back at my right shoulder. But it's a fun shot to do. I just hit the flop shot. If you want to hit a driving shot, we're going to hinge the club and we're going to turn the club down, which is going to take the loft off the club. And now we can kind of hit a punch shot and keep the ball low, but it'll have some spin on it, so we can take it up. But this is just one of those ways to practice another variable. It's fun to do, but once you get a feel for those different variables, then you know how to manipulate them and you will have a better short game. I hope you liked the video. Thanks for checking it out. Like, subscribe, and please post any comments if you have any questions.